Welcome to Your Career Podcast with Jane Jackson, where I help mid-career professionals overcome self-doubt and gain career clarity and the confidence to create the life and career they desire. Book a Zoom chat with me at janejacksoncoach.com. I'd love to meet you and discover what's happening in your career. Do you really know what you actually want from the next chapter of your working life? Clarity, honestly, is the foundation of every confident career decision. And confidence doesn't suddenly appear. It grows when you make structured reflection, have honest conversations, be yourself. And if you have a skilled guide in your corner asking the questions that you've been avoiding, it really helps. Welcome to episode 283 of Your Career Podcast. I've recently had a lot of clients who are coming to me in a panic because their career has suddenly reached crisis stage. So what this episode is all about is please don't postpone your career planning until it becomes a crisis. Let's be a little bit proactive, yes? So let me explain. Career planning, it's important because nobody plans to have a crisis on a Tuesday, for example. Okay. However, that's exactly when it tends to happen, or more likely. I've found over the past 25 years, and you know, I've been a career transition coach, it tends to happen a day or two before Christmas. Not ideal. And very stressful when you've already maxed out your credit card on Christmas presents and that fabulous holiday with your family that you've been looking forward to for so long. I don't know why it always happens just before Christmas, but it always tends to happen, that redundancy, before a big holiday or just after you've spent a lot of money. So anyway, a restructure is announced in the Monday all-hands meeting. And by Tuesday, what happens is you're staring at an email about your role being under review, or that your role will be made redundant as of this week. So sometimes it's more subtle than that. Sometimes, there's a moment in a meeting when perhaps you've made a suggestion and you watched it float past unnoticed. Everyone ignored it, and you realized that somewhere along the way, you became invisible in your own workspace. And that is really uncomfortable. I've felt that in the past as well. Not a nice feeling when you don't feel recognized or appreciated. So I've supported professionals through hundreds of these Tuesdays over the past 20 years as a career coach, and I've noticed that something separates the people who navigate these crises with confidence from the people who feel completely blindsided and really scared about what's next. So it has nothing to do with talent, seniority, or luck. It comes down to when they started paying attention to their career. Are you paying attention to your career, I wonder? You see, there are certain things in life that are truly important. However, they never feel urgent, do they? Things like your health. It's like, oh yes, I'll work out at some stage, soon I will work out. Your relationships. Oh yes, I'll make that call. I'll check in on someone. And also, what about your professional development? Maybe next week, maybe next year. And what about your career? It's ticking along. There's nothing that you really need to do. You should do something, but maybe later, right? None of these things ever shout at you. They don't send you calendar reminders or chase you with red flags. They just sit there patiently, waiting for your attention while the noisy, urgent things, which are deadlines, school runs, everyone else's emergencies, push their way to the front of the queue. So we tell ourselves we'll get to the important things later, after this busy period, after the school holidays, after Christmas, and most of the time we get away with it until the day that we don't. And I learned this lesson myself the very hard way, and it wasn't actually about my career. It was about something far more mundane, a little burgundy booklet and a little blue document that live in my study drawer. So this is going to be a really good example of why it's important to pay attention to stuff. So here's my story. Many years ago, I was living in Singapore. My daughter, Jess, was 2 at the time, and my husband travelled constantly for work, and I was juggling my career and a toddler. So you can imagine how much attention I was giving to the important but not urgent things in my life. Things like, oh, I don't know, maybe checking passport expiry dates, for example. Now, I hold 2 passports, British and Australian, and I choose whichever one gets me through immigration fastest, depending on where I'm going. And it's one of the great perks of dual citizenship, along with supporting whichever cricket team happens to be winning. Now, that Christmas, many years ago, Jess and I were flying to Sydney to visit my in laws. My husband was already there on business, and we were going to Australia. So I took my Australian passport and left the British one at home. That makes sense, doesn't it? So we arrived at Changi Airport with plenty of time to spare, and I was feeling rather organised and pleased with myself. But then the check-in lady looked at my passport, looked at me, and said, "I'm sorry, you can't fly. This passport has expired." So the blood drained from my head, and my 2-year-old's passport was perfectly valid. Mine was not. My toddler was more travel ready than her mother was. I did some frantic negotiating, which got me absolutely nowhere, and then some frantic mental arithmetic. 30 minutes home in a taxi, 30 minutes back. If the traffic gods were kind, there was just enough time to grab my British passport and make the flight, because my British passport hopefully had not expired either. The check-in lady told me to hurry up and to come straight back to her. So there I was, dashing across Singapore in a taxi with bewildered little toddler asking, "Why are we going home, Mummy? Aren't we going to Australia?" Over and over again while I sweated through my clothes in the tropical heat. So we made it home. I grabbed the passport, raced back, and as the check-in lady waved us over, a horrible new thought arrived. My British passport had no Australian visa in it. Now, did I mention it to the check-in lady? I did not. I smiled, I handed over my British passport and hoped, fingers crossed. She checked the passport, printed our boarding passes, and off we ran to the gate. Amazing, arriving to the sound of the final boarding call, with me drenched in sweat and Jess thoroughly fed up with being rushed about, though to her great credit, she really didn't complain. She's such a great, great kid. Now, did I spend that 8-hour flight relaxing? No, I spent it wide awake rehearsing speeches for Australian immigration while my daughter slept like the proverbial baby beside me. At Sydney Airport, we got there. Honestly, I, I was a wreck by the time I got to Sydney. I handed over Jess's passport, no problem. Her passport was valid. Then my expired Australian passport I handed over. Big problem. So I handed over my valid British one with no visa. Ended up being a bigger problem. The officer told me my daughter could enter Australia, but I couldn't. My 2-year-old was welcome. Her mother was to be turned away. So I did the only thing I had left. I burst into tears and said, "But my Australian husband is waiting at this airport. My daughter is Australian. How can I not be with her?" Luckily, the gods smiled on me, or more probably they just took enormous pity on this wreck of a woman, because the officer sighed and said, "Look, lady, I'll let you in this time, but you must renew that passport immediately, the Australian one." So when I found my husband and told him the whole saga, he shook his head and asked me one question. "So what was the lesson learned here?" And I knew it. Do the non-urgent, important things before they become urgent, important, and very, very stressful. An easy job renewing a passport, but I'd been putting it off for months because it never felt urgent. At that little postponement cost me a mad taxi dash, an 8-hour flight of pure dread, and very nearly Christmas with my family. So your career actually works the same way. This brings me to a framework I've used for myself and my clients many, many times. Do the non-urgent, important things before they become urgent, important, and very, very stressful. Okay. So this is the framework. I've used it with my clients many, many times. It's the urgent, important matrix, and it's beautifully simple. Okay. Stephen Covey, he made this framework famous. Okay. Two F's, framework famous, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he credited the idea to Dwight D. Eisenhower, who apparently observed that what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Have you noticed that yourself as well? It makes sense to me because I often seem to be in the urgent and not important state because someone else has asked me for something and it had nothing to do with what I wanted or needed to do. So the matrix is beautifully simple. All you do, draw a cross on a piece of paper. So you've got 4 boxes. One axis measures urgency, so urgent and non-urgent. The other measures importance, so important and non-important. So you can find this on my website at janejacksoncoach.com, and I'll add the link to the article about it in my show notes for this podcast episode as well. So every little task in your life lands in one of those 4 quadrants. Very simple, okay? There is urgent and important. Urgent and important are the crises, deadlines that demand attention right now, okay? Like the story I just told you about. Important but not urgent. This is the meaningful work that builds your future. Then there's urgent but not important. So this is urgent because other people have priorities and they dress them up as emergencies. So you think it's important, but actually not at all in the grand scheme of things to you, right? So neither urgent nor important. So not urgent, not important. And this is, when you're scrolling social media, it's the busy work, it's the time confetti wittering away, just with no purpose whatsoever. And so now you know the stress of being in the important and urgent. Covey's great insight was that effective people spend most of the time in the second quadrant, the important but not urgent one, right? That's where your health, your relationships, your learning, your long-term planning all lives, along with renewing passports before they expire. And that's exactly where your career and career planning or job search branding belongs, okay? So this is why your career never feels urgent until it suddenly is. All right. So here's the happening in the second quadrant. Nothing ever shouts for your attention. Now, what I want you to do is to really think carefully about where you witter away the work that is very, very important to you. Okay. So your career doesn't send calendar reminders, does it? It doesn't escalate itself into your inbox with a red flag. It just sits there year after year, whispering in your mind quietly, you really should update your resume. Or it really might be worth having a coffee with that old colleague who's, so well connected. However, the urgent quadrants bellow about deadlines, meetings, everyone else's emergencies. I call it OPP, other people's problems. So your important resume stays untouched. Your LinkedIn profile still describes the job you had 2 roles ago. Not good. Your nagging question about whether this career still fits gets filed under the, oh, I'll think about it after this busy period. And as we all know, the busy period never ends. It simply hands a baton over to the next one. Then one Tuesday, without your permission whatsoever, your career suddenly jumps quadrants. The redundancy conversation, the restructure, the new manager who changes everything and makes the culture just awful to be in. And now the most important area of your working life is also the most urgent, and you're making decisions that will shape the next decade under the worst possible conditions, pressure, shock, and a very bruised sense of your own worth. Sorry, don't mean to frighten you, but I really want to get this point across. What does important but not urgent career work actually look like? And this is the question I wish my new clients would have asked themselves before their Tuesday arrived, their redundancy notification, their feeling fed up with this awful toxic environment. Now, the good news is that the work is neither mysterious nor is it overwhelming. It looks like this. Number one, knowing your value. Let me ask you, can you articulate clearly and confidently what value you bring to an organization? Not your job title, because job titles don't tell the story, they're just labels, but the problems you solve and the results you deliver. Most professionals I meet can do this for everyone on their team except themselves. And also, next is gaining career clarity. Do you really know what you actually want from the next chapter of your working life? Clarity, honestly, is the foundation of every confident career decision. And confidence doesn't suddenly appear, it grows when you make structured reflection, have honest conversations, be yourself, and if you have a skilled guide in your corner asking the questions that you've been avoiding, it really helps. You also need to keep your career assets current. Assets, okay? They are your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and your professional story. It should never be a little more than a light polish away from being ready when you need it. Not because you're planning to leave your organization necessarily, but because opportunity and disruption share that same habit. They tend to arrive unannounced, unexpected. Nurturing your network before you need it is a very good thing to do too, because networking when you urgently need a job feels like asking to borrow a lot of money. Uncomfortable. Networking when you don't need to makes it feel like developing a friendship. The relationships you tend in the calm quadrant, yes, are the ones that open doors during the urgent quadrant. So the professionals who thrive did their career work early. The professionals who thrive did their career work early, okay? Just making that point there. When I think of my clients who move through redundancy or career change with the most confidence, they shared this quality. They weren't starting from zero on that awful worst day. They knew their worth, so a restructure didn't feel like a verdict on their value. And you know how that redundancy notification makes you feel very small and you think, oh, it's all my fault, I'm no good. I don't want you to think that, okay? So restructure doesn't feel like a verdict on your value if you know what your worth is. My clients had clarity about their direction so they could calmly assess opportunities instead of grabbing that first lifeboat, that next job, which might not be good for them anyway. So their professional story was ready to tell, and they spent their energy on possibilities rather than panicking and paperwork. So that is what quadrant 2 career work buys you. Not immunity from the Tuesday, that dreaded notification day, because none of us gets immunity from anything. What it does buy you is the ability to meet negativity or unfortunate circumstances more confidently because you'll be prepared. So let me ask you, where are you at your career right now? If you've listened to this all the way through, you probably already know your answer. Your career has been sitting in the important but not urgent quadrant, waiting politely for a little bit of attention. So consider this my invitation to you to give that turn before circumstances do it for you. I've recently recorded a new welcome video. Okay, it was important but not urgent for me to do, but I decided to do it anyway. And it's now on my homepage at janejacksoncoach.com that explains exactly how I support you, mid-career professionals, to gain the clarity and confidence to take control of your career. Whether things feel calm right now or that nasty, urgent Tuesday has already arrived. So why not go to janejacksoncoach.com, watch the video, take my career success quiz, because there's a link there as well, to discover where you stand and what needs attention. And if you happen to be ready for an exploratory conversation, book a chat with me and let's discuss how, if you need it, I can support you. All right? The important work is always easier with support, and it's never too early to begin, and I'm here to support you. Okay, so I'm glad that you listened today. I hope I haven't frightened you, but honestly, let's take care of the tough stuff before it becomes really tough. All right, and I will see you next time. Bye now. Want more career inspiration? Go to janejacksoncoach.com and take my free career quiz to find out how to gain career clarity and the confidence to go for that job you'll love. Or book a complimentary Zoom chat with me, janejacksoncoach.com. I'll see you soon.